Hey everyone, so today's topic is actually going to be a bit of a controversial one, but I did get the request in the comment section of the videos that I've been putting out there. And just FYI, I do read those comments. So if you have suggestions for other videos or you just want to say hi or, let me know your thoughts on the video quality or anything like that, please comment below. I always read them. Try not to be too mean. That'd be great. If you're super mean, I'll probably ignore you. But if you have constructive criticism, I'll most likely take those serious. But anyway, so one of the people who was watching the video wanted me to do a video on who to use your legendary books on. And they probably meant epic books and rare books as well. But I'm going to break it up into a couple different videos, because I think it's a topic that needs to be discussed at length. And also, if I were to do all the characters reviewed in one video, legendary, epic, rare, it would be really long. I'm going to try and keep this to the standard 20 minutes. So let's just talk about that. So this mastery system, right, it was implemented not too long ago, where you would acquire these legendary or epic or rare books throughout the game, right? And legendary books can only be used on legendary heroes, epic books on epic heroes, rare books or elite books, on elite heroes. And when it was introduced, people were like, oh, okay, this is cool, but how hard is it going to be to get these? Are they going to be behind a paywall? Can you grind for them? Are they accessible to all free to play? And I think right now they still need to do a better job on a way to get more books out to people. It's definitely not enough. And on top of that, these legendary books are just way too hard to get for anyone who doesn't spend money. They are locked behind a lot of paywalls. You only get about anywhere from 3 to 4, 5, 6, maybe 5 or 6 a month if you're lucky, and that's if you hoard resources. It's a long spiel. There's plenty of people who would probably comment and say, how are you getting 6 Lego books for free each month? And I don't have any justification on that right now. It's just off the top of my head, so I could be wrong. But anyway, so that is an issue that they need to correct. But with that being said, these legendary books, if you do have them, because they're such a valuable resource, it is hard to figure out who to put them into, because it can be a really, really big mistake if you put it into the wrong people. So that's the baseline, right? In this mastery tree, there's always 15 total levels. You have physique, gear, and abilities. These vary depending on the hero. This gear section is always the same, but the physique and ability can also change. I'm not going to get into how they're different or whatever, because this is a video about who to use these books on, right? So if you want to deep dive into the mastery system, that's got to be in a separate video. So mastery books are used for a couple things. The main thing, in my opinion, and this is where you should utilize your mastery books most efficiently, is for your dungeons. Gear is always the most important thing in these games. Okay, if you don't have good gear, it doesn't matter how many of the broken heroes you have or whatever, you're going to get outclassed by people who have better gear. So that's what I did whenever I started using the mastery books. I wanted to get up to these level 16 dungeons, or Hell 4 stages, because they have this fabled gear. And if possible, it's nice to do it quicker, because you have the ability to get more gear, and you're limited to only 10 multi-battles, at a time, where like other games you have up to 100. So the quicker is kind of nice. It's not necessary, though. But when I'm looking about prioritizing my books, I always try and figure out how I can get to this stage, Hell Stage 4. Okay? Tulpa, you really don't need to worry about, because the gear here is not fantastic. If you have heroes that you want to prioritize to make sure you can farm Ash Magisteria, this is your best bet for sure. Witch of the Wind, always a nice one because Assassin is a solid set. And then Queen of Tides is just nice to be able to farm because Warrior is a nice 2-piece set. Cursed is used in a couple PvE areas. And Revival is just an okay piece as well, if you're early on. So even if you can't farm up to Hell Stage 4, if you can get to Hell Stage 2, where you're getting legendary gear drops, at better rates, that's also where you should use your books, okay? So I haven't used a whole lot of legendary books on dungeons, but I've picked specific heroes to allow me to do that and be efficient in areas. So if you look at Ash Magisteria, right, and I'll get into which characters to book, we'll go to the index and all that stuff. If you look at these teams, there are like 1 or 2 people that are booked, right? If you look at this team, Opal is most likely booked, and allowing her to get the stats needed to take down the boss quickly. Nathalia is probably booked because she is the wave clear, and her stats are, they need to be pretty high. But Ciara and William, they're not. So they prioritized Opal and Nathalia. The other thing, if you go to Queen of Tides, is a better representation, I think, because like this team 2 here, the only person that is booked here is Antinua. And I don't even know if she needed to be, if you could get the right gear on her. But if you needed to, you could use some epic books that would allow you to farm this quickly. So that is a general rule of who I think you should book first. People that help you get to the highest stage dungeon as possible to allow you to farm the best gear in the game, which is that fabled gear. Okay? Other than that, you really only truly need legendary books put into people that are going to be used in PvP. So that is the nice thing about books. Now, if you want to go for high scores, you want to really be effective in guild boss, you really want to be effective in guild versus environment, Ruins of the Gods, then yeah, maybe you book out more PvE heroes that aren't really used in Arena. But my mindset is, other than people in dungeons, what you want to start booking are people in the PvP game modes, because that's where other people are booking PvP characters, and you're going to need them. So this video is going to be mainly on legendaries that are wood, fire, or water. I do not want to talk about light and darks too much or rank them, because other than maybe one character, which is Evelyn First Dawn, all of these other light and dark characters are 100% worth books. They're so hard to come by. They're so hard to come by that if you're lucky enough to have 1 or 2 of them, they're going to be, one of your first choices to book. The reason I say this is, for light and dark legendaries, you can't ascend them, right? You can't get those additional stat bonuses that are much easier on the red, green, and blue characters. One, because you have the ascension pots, right? So those ascension pots that you get from Void Tower Hard and whatnot, they can be used to ascend your characters and get that bonus, 15 base stat percentage or speed or health or whatever. For light and dark characters, you can't do that. So you need to get the stats from other places, and that's where those legendary books come from. So that's why light and dark characters are usually the ones prioritized. But like I said, I really don't want to talk about them here because a lot of people don't have those characters. So today, we're just talking about legendaries. We're talking about wood, fire, and water. And I am going to be prioritizing units that are good in Arena, because I think that's where your book should be prioritized after your dungeons. So let's look at this. So Desmond, this guy is a meme. He is absolutely terrible. He had some potential early on, and then the devs just keep nerfing him. Like, he's useless, and they nerf him more and more. They're like, oh, if you thought he was useless now look at how useless he is. So he's kind of the running joke of this game. So Bulin is a decent AoE nuker for green, but you have much better options on the legendary level and at the epic level. But the nice thing about Bulin is she's also really good in PvE content. So if you're free to play, if Bulin is one of the main characters you have her ascended to A5, luckily, or something like that, you know? She is not a bad legendary book target. But if you have other options and you're just looking at PvP, Bulin is not who you should be putting legendary books into. Another general rule whenever we get to support heroes, like Godfairy, right? Support heroes, and I've mentioned it in other videos, don't necessarily need books to be relevant. The ones that need books the most are your attack heroes, because they're the ones who benefit the most from the stat buffs. So Godfairy, support heroes, they don't need books. Godfairy is a very niche kind of unit in Arena right now. Do not use books on Godfairy. Godfairy does not need books to be relevant in the Arena meta. So Kasim, I really like Kasim. Kasim has this really cool trait where whenever he's hit by area damage, he has a passive, where he counterattacks with this 190% damage on whoever has the highest attack, and then he goes next. It's really cool. And then on top of that, he removes a control effect. So I actually have a Kasim. The problem is he needs this Ascension 5 to get dodge up, and that's what makes him relevant. Without an Ascension 5, you shouldn't be booking Kasim. But if you have an A5 Kasim, he's a decent option. I think he's pretty relevant and useful in today's meta. He has decent attack. He has a high damage ultimate, and he protects himself. So this is a pretty solid character to book if you have A5. A lot of people don't have him, especially A5. But with most of the meta being water, I think Kasim is a solid option for legendary books. Rick. So when Rick came out, he was used as a Lydia specialist, which we'll get to. Rick has this plus 50 accuracy, which is good against dodge people. So he would be also good against Levi in regards to being able to hit Levi. He is a weak affinity, so that is a bit of a bummer. Rick does start in stealth, so that kind of protects him from being hit by single damage dealers, which is somewhat relevant in the meta. Like Alicia, that really broken fire unit cannot target Rick. So this is a nice skill for Rick. And then he also has crit resistance, even when he's not ascended to A5. 50% crit resistance does give him a little bit of sustain. What makes Rick really good as well in the meta is his affinity is wood. And like I said, there's a lot of really good water heroes. And on his ultimate ability, he ignores 30% of the target's defense. And whenever they go, if he's in stealth, he counterattacks. And then on top of that, if that character is then killed, it resets his ultimate, which is pretty hard hitting. So Rick is another nice hero to book. Yolanda is a support character, very, very good. But with her being support, you don't need to put legendary books into her. So Avera used to be like Queen Bee when it came to wood nukers, but she's kind of been outclassed by Baron. So I would not use legendary books on Avera. There are just much better characters that are easier to get, and their damage output is better. So Avera, I would not use legendary books. So Gangelo. Gangelo used to be the king of dungeons before they introduced this kind of poison immunity stuff in the higher health stages. So Gangelo, great support hero, great for dungeons up to level 12, and still relevant in Gemini Dragon. Not worth the books. Savannah. Savannah is a nice single target wood nuker, but I think her role is more PvE related than PvP. She does have some interesting things going for her, but I don't think she is worth booking. Rachel. Rachel is really good in Queen of Tides, and she's very good against the water boss in Guild versus Environment, but she's more of a PvE character. She can be solid in Arena, but I do not think she's worth the books. I think there are better characters that nuke, like Baron. I think Ashlyn is a more relevant character. I think Kasim and Rick are probably better units to use your books on than Rachel. So Shane. Shane is kind of the new PvE dungeon lord over Gangelo now with the higher stages. He does not need books. He's fine even at level 60 to get that accomplished. So Goobeg. I actually have Goobeg at Ascended 5, which allows him to get this bonus turns based on his speed. I booked out Goobeg. Now, I really liked Goobeg. I liked his speed. Some things kind of changed for me after I booked him, so I do regret wasting my books on him. But he does benefit from them. Like, the additional speed is really necessary. The additional attack stats are kind of necessary as well. I'm thinking of making a dedicated video on Goobeg that shows his usefulness, but he pairs up with a lot of people that do joint attacks based on when another character is attacking. But sadly, I think there are better green heroes to book other than Goobeg. So I wouldn't say it's a waste. I just think you should prioritize other better green heroes than Goobeg in Arena. So Fianna is actually pretty interesting, and she is a character that I would love to book one day, but because of how hard legendary books are to get, I don't think she's the best option right now. She grants herself some shield, some sustain, she takes less damage, which is really cool. She grants herself invincible, which, as we talked about with the newest season hero, this is the good version of invincible. It's also a pretty hard-hitting ultimate. And then the more effects that she has on herself, she actually does a second attack. I think the reason why Fianna is a viable option, one, she just has a lot of survivability. She has some hard-hitting single-target damage hits. But because she's wood, like I said, there's a lot of water heroes in the meta in PvP that make her a viable option. But I think there are more meta units over her, like Rick, like Kasim, like Ashlyn, that I would prioritize over her. So, Adoette, I think that's how you say her name. She was a Matrix hero. The Matrix heroes, and I'll back out here real quick just so I can show you that. So the Matrix heroes are in this rally, right? And if you do this rally tree, you use badges. Sorry, it's in the events. I'm going off script here. Yeah, where if you have badges, you can use them and you get these special matrices here. This one's for Grayson. And if you get enough of them, you can fuse these heroes out of the matrices, which is kind of a useless system. And get them early. It's like 3 months early or 2 months early, something like that. Right now, there's been a couple of them, and they haven't been like super great. They haven't been useless, but yeah, that's how you got her. I still don't know if you can pull her from Yellow Shards yet. I'm assuming you can. This hero is interesting. I've seen some pretty well-built ones do a lot of damage, but for me, just she's a hero that has this AoE nuking ability is outclassed by an epic. So why waste your legendary books on something that a wood hero in epic, can do that this hero can do, right? She has this trait that deals true damage equal to negative effects on them. She has a big AoE hit that also puts negative effects on, but her big damage comes from her trait. But again, I don't think I would use the books on someone like that whenever there's an epic out there that just hits harder and is easier to book, because epic books are easier to get. So Donovan is an interesting character as well. He's kind of like the wood version of Geral. He gets these rages, and then whenever he gets to a certain amount, he gets a bonus turn. So pretty cool. If he's ascended, he resets his ultimate ability, which removes all negative effects from him and then deals 220% damage. And then he has this AoE that removes shields and then bonus damage based on his health. The thing is his multipliers just aren't good enough. And on top of that, none of his effects ignore defense or anything like that. So I think Donovan would still lose hard to some of the meta meta water heroes. So he is not worth books in my opinion. Mathasia, big support hero, great reviver, really relevant in the meta. I do not think that you need to use books on her. It's not a bad option, but I think just because of how hard they are to come by, you want to be using them on your attack heroes instead. So Ashlyn is really interesting, and it's kind of going against all of the things that I've been saying so far, because one, Ashlyn is a damage dealer. She can do a lot of damage when she switches modes into this light and dark mode, through her special ability. But most of Ashlyn's utility actually comes from a control aspect, which is this 2-turn stun. I have started to put books in her, one, because I need her to be fast enough. And then two, she gets a bunch of tank. She gets a lot of survivability stats from mastery books on top of speed, and then it also makes her a bit of a threat when she wants to do damage. So this is the one exception to the rule, per se, because right now in the meta, she's a control unit. But if she would eventually become a damage-dealing unit, she still benefits from the books. So Ashlyn, in my opinion, is the best green hero in the game, and I think she is 100% worth the books. If you're looking for a green hero in Legendary to fulfill a role, this is who you're going to use your books on, for sure. Candidate number 1. Jocasta, I just made a video about her. She's a great cleanser. She's really good against some of those pesky control units. Does not need books. She doesn't. If you need to put some books in her to give her some extra speed, try and get the right ones, you just got to get lucky whenever it comes to that stuff. Fahim is one of the more useless heroes in the game. He just doesn't do enough. He has some interesting mechanics like ally attacking and stuff like that. Increases his damage dealt, reduces ultimates. But he doesn't do enough, and his joint attack is only for 1 turn, so he's pretty useless. This guy deserves to stay unleveled. He's not very good. So Barclay is a great PvE unit. He's one of the meta guild boss teams. He's used in a couple bleed comps in the dungeons. So this guy is a really nice person to book out for dungeon runs if you have specific bleed teams. So that's really cool. I have seen him used in some PvP content. I will say, though, he's not meta. So I would not use my books on him for an arena aspect. But if you wanted to look up some of those bleed comps, he might be a nice option for you to use books on to get stats. And then outside of Desmond, this Fenrir guy might actually be the most useless green hero right behind Desmond. So, yeah, don't waste your books on him. All right, moving to fire. So, Valeria. Valeria used to be in the rookie summons, which they took away. She's a great AoE nuker, but I use her more in the PvE setting over PvP. There's not a whole lot of green units in the meta, and if there are, they're very, very quick. So Valeria, I don't think is going to get a whole lot of use out of them, and she'll most likely just die from the other water units. I don't think she's good enough at her job to warrant books. So Geral, I've gone up against some pretty good Gerals. Geral has lifesteal on his counterattack, even though it's a one-turn cooldown. But he does then go into this, Azura mode or whatever it's called, where he's doing damage based on his health as well. So I've seen some tanky Gerals with Dragon Scale, and this is a very nice hero. He's great in guild versus environment. He's used in some dungeon teams, so he's not a bad option. I think there are just better options out there over Geral for fire damage dealers. I will say, though, he's one of the few fire damage dealers that is a tank. So if you're looking for that kind of specific role, there are a bunch of options at tank teams. Geral is probably a really nice fit for you. So I won't say he's not a good candidate for books, but if it were me, I would prioritize other people over him. So Urinal. Urinal is absolutely fantastic in regular arena. She has her places in RTA, but she was one of the seasonal heroes as well, similar to the one we have ongoing in Roselight. Urinal was really, really good because she ignores certain amounts of defense based on the difference between her attack and the opponent's enemy's attack. She can nuke down the tankiest of teams. I know plenty of people that have her booked because they take normal arena seriously. I've stopped kind of caring about normal arena, but this is a very, very viable option for normal arena if that is something that you want to prioritize. Urinal is top tier arena nuker for fire, especially AoE. So very good option. Bachelor. Bachelor is a single target igniter. This is purely a PvE character. He's top notch when it comes to guild versus environment, but other than that, I don't think he's worth books. Bella is a top tier hero for the Tulpa dungeon, but that's really her main use. I would not use books on her. Cirrus used to be really key in completing Void Tower hard. She's kind of fallen off of the meta for Void Tower hard. So she is not worth the books as well. Zitlin is a great support hero, but again, support heroes don't really need books. So don't use books in Zitlin. Hector is one of the people that is used in some guild versus environment comps. He's also used in guild boss comps. He's not really an arena unit, so I would not use books on him. He's also not really used in dungeons either. Brand. So Brand used to be one of the meta arena units before they started releasing all of these broken characters. I have gone up against some tanky Brands in RTA. He's not super relevant anymore, and he's also a defense character. The books help him get his health up, which grants this big shield to your entire team based on his health at the start of the round. And he can cleanse off a debuff while also giving attack up and defense up to your team. So having him fast and then also big shields for health, he's not a bad hero to use books on if you want to go the tanky strategy, but again, I don't think you need them. I think you want to use your legendary books in attack heroes. So Balbaruth is interesting because it allows you to move slower because he always reborns himself whenever he dies. And then if he kills somebody with his ultimate ability, it refreshes his trait. And his trait refreshes his his abilities. So it's a really cool mix. The problem is right now I don't think his ultimate hits hard enough, and there's not enough good targets. You know, he doesn't ignore defense. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of grass or wood heroes in the meta. So for him to be able to one-shot some of these, light and dark heroes, it's just not really a viable option. So as much as I like his kit in the meta, the damage output just isn't there. So Ralph is another Matrix hero similar to Antidet. He puts up these 2-turn taunts. He takes damage for your allies. Really good hero, but definitely support. He does not need any kind of books in him. Florence is a PvE god, but she does not need books. You just need her fast. You need her with some health, but all of that stuff you can get from gear. Darcy is similar to Geral in a way that she counterattacks, that she's supposed to be a tank hero, but she has just her damage output is not there. There's not enough heroes that she's relevant against in the meta. Do not waste your books on Darcy. So Talus is a really interesting single target nuker in the fire slot. Zulus, who is another content creator, has partial books in him. I don't think he's fully booked out, but he does have some partial books in him, and he does hit very hard. He also does true damage based on your opponent's health. So if you're going up against tank teams, or if you're struggling against tank teams and you have a Talusine, he is a viable option for books. He is definitely not a waste. He has solid base speed, so he's going to go before a lot of people, and he has a very high attack stat. So he's a pretty interesting character, and I would say is book worthy. Levi. I mean, you guys know how I feel about Levi. If you don't have an A5 Levi, you really hate Levi. But if you have an A5 Levi, I think you should book him. I think he's really good. He's a unique hero, kind of one of a kind. So he's definitely worth the books, I can say from personal experience. Matson is a pretty good PvE character. He's good in some guild versus environment comps. He's good against some bosses. So Matson is more of a PvE hero. He's not used really in dungeons, so he's not worth books in my opinion, unless you're prioritizing those other game modes that I was mentioning. Alicia. I think Alicia is the premier fire hero right now. I think she's the best fire hero in the game. I use her all the time in PvP, in RTA, all of that. I just made a video on her not too long ago. Go check that out. Benefits from all of those mastery books. So if you have an Alicia, 100% book her out. You will not regret it. Roselight. So, I just made my video on Roselight. I really, really liked her concept on paper. She's still a good hero. She does unique things with this Fire Scythe, Frost Scythe stuff. Again, go check out my video for a more dedicated video on it. I did have some discussions with one of the content creator moderators about this passive. And as you can see now, it's now detailed as a special ability instead of passive up here, where before this latest fix, it was saying passive. Now, it says remove one negative effect on this hero. I thought it would remove stuns or frost, freeze, and it doesn't. They added this in here. This effect cannot be triggered when this hero is controlled. So, this hero is good. She's not bad at all. The problem is she is not as top tier as Alicia because of this change. If she had the ability to remove stun and freeze, I think she would be right on par with Alicia. But because she isn't, I I would prioritize Alicia's books over her, but she's still a very hard single target fire hitter that has some sustain with her invincible and counterattacks. The problem is the person that she's wanting to counterattack, which is Ashlyn, can just stun her. So it kind of makes her irrelevant in that matchup against Ashlyn. So anyway, good character. She's probably worth books, but I think she's going to be more of a PvE character than a PvP character. And then Gavin. Gavin's interesting as well. So he has that trait that allows him to ignore defense, which is really nice. He puts up immune, which is a really good ability for PvP. The problem with Gavin is he's very, very slow, and even the amount of books that you put in him is not going to make him fast enough, I think, to be relevant in the meta. Time will tell if he is going to be good in the new dungeon. I've speculated on that, hence why I pulled for him. But as of now, I do not think he should be booked. All right, and this is definitely a long one. I said it was going to be 20 minutes, and I'm on 36 minutes. So strap in, people, because we still got water. Okay. So Hayam. Hayam is actually one of those rare characters in the game that is really good in PvP, and she doesn't need books. So this is a great character to build out and get some damage into. She's really good because of this invincible trait. She's much better in PvP in RTA than she is in regular arena because there's a lot of ways to get around this invincible. But in RTA, she's a really good counter pick if your opponent did not bring ways to either block this or to remove it. The reason why she doesn't need books is her damage scales based on how much damage your entire team took. So even though this multiplier is 130%, if your entire team gets wiped and she's the last one standing, she can nuke down the entire opponent team, even if they have books or they're tanky or whatnot. I've lost to plenty of Hayams. So great unit. If you do book her, she's probably even stronger, but she doesn't need them, which is a beautiful thing. So Therese. Now, I got a buddy who has an Ascended Therese, which allows him to take reduced damage and then also recover some health. So I won't get into the details, but he has Sustain, and he takes less damage, and then he does huge damage on this ultimate ability against specific units in the meta, like Halia, who's one of the speed queens. If she uses her ultimate ability, this guy is going to nuke. So he's an interesting pick. He's kind of like the water version of Kasim, where he counterattacks or he doesn't specifically counterattack, but he gains an extra turn like Kasim when he's hit by an AoE ability, and he does a lot of damage. So he's definitely worth the books, but I think he needs to be Ascended 5. So Tia. Tia is a free character that you can get through Synthesis. She's very fast, and she puts up this AoE freeze, which is a real pain in the butt. On top of that, she has this Frostbite that gives opponents minus 10 speed, 10% speed. If she's able to go first and control the enemy team, this is extremely detrimental. I think Tia is a viable option to book, even though she's not a huge damage dealer. She can do a little bit of damage, but you're going to be building her for speed and to control the entire enemy team. So this is another one of those, exceptions to the rule, where even though she's not an offensive hero, because you need that speed to allow her to go in front of everyone else, she might be worth the books. Nero. I've mentioned this guy in my dedicated Nero video. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. I think this hero is the best red, green, blue character in the entire game. I use him everywhere. He's just nuts. On top of that, he benefits from every single book. Every single one. He's going to get attack, health, defense. All of his abilities, getting more damage is important. Nero is probably the best character to use legendary books on, in my opinion. Blackhorn. Blackhorn is a support hero, really good supporter, does cleanses, big heals, not really a PvP unit, more for PvE and dungeons, but being support, you don't need to book him out. Pluto. Pluto was kind of an Ash specialist, but he's since even become irrelevant. Like his kit is specifically made for Ash dungeon, but yeah, I don't think he's worth the books. Tashir, great support hero. I use her in PvP a lot. In RTA specifically, she does not need books though. Elune was the very first Matrix hero, behind those rallies, and she is one of the most useless characters in the game. So do not use books on her. Mikasa. So Mikasa was one of the Attack on Titan characters during that collab. She's a great hero for Guild Boss, and she's also a great hero for any kind of guild versus environment. On top of that, she's used in a couple dungeons in the Bleed team with Barclay, which I've mentioned, but not really a PvP unit that I've seen to this point. So Thor. Thor is a bruiser. He's got this counterattack on his passive. He has this really unique ignoring all positive effects. He's also going to be the Magic Pass hero, so you're going to be able to get a copy of him. I think Thor is probably a decent hero to book. The problem is I think that there's just better options out there, more unique kind of kits that put them in front of Thor. But I do not think he's a bad option for books. I think there are other characters that are better than him. Aaron. Aaron is a PvE god. Really great in dungeons, really great in guild versus environment. Amazing in all aspects there, but you do not need to book him out. Ciara. I made a video about Ciara. I was kind of arguing that if you are a free-to-play player, if you're just starting out in the game, she's probably your best option to do legendary books on, because she's used in all different aspects of the game, not just dungeons, but she's also a viable PvP character. Definitely worth books in my opinion. I want to book her out myself, in the future for sure. So I think she's a viable option as well, which I've mentioned on her dedicated video. Hydrissia is interesting. She does these 2 big AoE nukes. She also does an AoE on her trait. She has speed down. She's not a bad character at all, but she is outclassed by other water nukers such as Nero, such as Hayam, Ciara, even to an extent. So I don't think she's worth books. You should just use her as an adventure farmer to get additional jelly. Opal. Opal is queen of dungeons, speedruns. She was one of the first legendaries I booked, but she's not a PvP unit. Malhex. Malhex is a little underrated. He's not really used anywhere in the game. He is okay, but do not use your books on him. Halia. Halia is the queen of speed. She has this ultimate ability that gives your team plus speed and their team minus speed. It's unremovable. This character is like bonkers broken, and she's one of the fastest characters in the game too, and she increases people's damage based on the speed differences. So I have her partially booked because I do need her fast enough to go first. So she is a really, really nice option to book at if you're looking to win the speed race. So after Wean, this character is like the meta right now. She is absolutely bonkers. Anytime she's hit by a critical hit, she counterattacks for like huge multiplier and then heals. She's got lifesteal and stuff like that. So yeah, this character was supposed to be a light and dark character, I think, and they just made her blue. I really want her. She's like my top hero that I want. 100% worth the books. She is the meta unit. Poros, no use for him right now. There's speculation that he's going to be good in the new dungeons that are coming out soon. But yeah, don't use books on him yet. Lyerly, useless. No books. Lydia, Lydia used to be really meta. She's easily countered now by like one of the best wood units in the game. But in RTA, if they do not bring either Rick or Ashlyn, it's all down to RNG, and Lydia is still useful there. She hits very, very hard on her passive, 220% damage, and she ignores defense. So she's actually somewhat of a decent counter to Nero, who's usually built pretty tanky. And then Grayson. Grayson's the new Matrix hero. I think he's going to be more of a PvE guy. I don't think that he needs books. So there you go, 45 minutes long. Man, whoever you guys are that stuck around to the end on this one, congratulations. I tried to go as fast as I can and explain. So hopefully this was helpful. Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks.